Why don't you just eat less and move more? Words that I heard come out of a previous partner's mouth about 8 years ago when I was lying on the bed crying for the first time, opening up about how much I was struggling with food. I felt like I could not stop eating. My cravings and my hunger was so high. Why don't you try eating less and moving more? Very well-meaning at the time, but it left me feeling isolated, alone, misunderstood, and ashamed, to be honest. I couldn't eat less and move more. If you are struggling with feeling out of control with food, intense cravings, intense hunger, yo-yoing weight, yo-yo dieting, then the advice of eat less, move more is horrendous advice, in my opinion. And I'm going to break down why I think it's horrendous advice, why I think that if it's not working for you, it's not your fault. The first serious issue with why don't you just eat less and move more is that, of course you've been trying to do that. It's not like you've been going through life with this concept and this advice completely outside of your vision. You're very aware that it would be a good idea to eat less and move more, and yet you are struggling to do that. So giving it advice, first of all, is like almost quite patronizing, I think. Of course you've been trying to do that. The question is, you've been struggling hard to do that. Why? Let's explore that, not with judgment, but with actual curiosity. The second issue with why don't you just eat less and move more is, what if the very reason why you are hungrier than other people, if you have more intense cravings, if you feel out of control with food, if you're binge eating, thinking about food often, what if one of the main reasons for that is the fact that you have been dieting, is the fact that you've been trying to mentally and physically restrict? Well, if that's true, and that's extremely common, then that advice is so flawed because it would actually exacerbate the problem. For myself personally, the more that I dieted, the more weight I was gaining over time because it was fueling binge eating, excessive hunger, preoccupation with food, and the rest. The third issue with why don't you eat less and move more is that it further embeds this idea that focusing on weight and calories and amount of food is the correct way to go, is the right way to go. When actually, if you're struggling with relationship with food, then continue to focus on weight loss. The number on the scale on how much you're eating is going to worsen and exacerbate the problem, not alleviate it. I needed support in helping me to get to a place where I could focus on taking care of myself and my health rather than valuing myself by a number on the scale, by body measurements. If you're struggling in your relationship with food, then this advice of why don't you just eat less and move more completely negates the fact that you are mentally struggling. You're having a very difficult time mentally with yourself, with your relationship with food. And it might lead you to think that you don't need to worry about those things, that you don't need to pay attention to those things, when really that is the route to getting better. The fourth issue is why don't you just eat less and move more when you're struggling with binge eating and feeling out of control with food and yo-yoing weight? The way that you're going to interact with that advice is going to be very different to someone who has a healthy relationship with food. If you said to my dad, who's got a great relationship with food, always has, naturally fit and healthy, why don't you eat less and move more? He probably wouldn't have any issue with doing so. To my dad, he could eat a little bit less and move a little bit more, and he wouldn't feel anxious, he wouldn't feel preoccupied, he wouldn't feel analytical, he wouldn't feel deprived, he wouldn't feel restricted, he wouldn't feel guilty if he didn't follow that one day. It wouldn't lead him to start binge eating. To him, it would be easy because he'd be doing it from this place of really focusing on his health. He would be flexible, it would be self-caring. And to help sort of conceptualize this, it's like someone who's struggled with an anxious attachment style, for instance, or low self-esteem or insecurity, and they're given the advice of, why don't you set some boundaries with people? And it would be quite common for them to feel very anxious and nervous about doing that. And they might set a boundary and then be like, oh, was I too aggressive? Did I say the wrong thing? Did I take it too far? Actually, anxiety analysis. Whereas if you said to someone who's got great self-esteem, a secure attachment style, super self-assured, hey, why don't you set a boundary there? They'd probably be like, yeah, all right. It would feel natural and easy and feel right. And they'd be perfectly confident doing that, right? Our inner world, our beliefs, our conditioning, our narrative, like our blueprint, as it were, changes the way that we interact with advice. And it's the same with, why don't you just eat a little bit less and move a little bit more? It is not easy for someone with disordered eating. The fifth issue with the advice of why don't you just eat less and move more is, as well-meaning as I'm sure that it is if you are struggling in your relationship with food and you are the recipient of that advice, it is so invalidating, and it can further cement this narrative of, gosh, there's something wrong with me. Should it really be that easy to eat less and move more? And I'm really struggling to do that. So maybe the problem is me. The problem is not with you. It's not about you specifically, and it's not a personal failing on your part at all. The next issue with the advice of why don't you just eat a little bit less and move a little bit more is that even if that was easy for you to do, you probably wouldn't want to do that anyway, because it implies some slow amount of progress. And you tend to be in this very urgent state of like, I'm binge eating, I'm feeling out of control with food, don't trust my body. My body seems to gain weight at any opportunity. I might have already gained a lot of weight and I'm kind of stressed and anxious about that. There's big urgency. And so it's well-meaning but terrible advice to receive, because it's not meeting you where you're at. And I'm absolutely not implying, I hope that it's clear, I'm not implying it should be this huge turnover of your diet to create huge results, as it were, in a short amount of time. I'm absolutely not implying that at all. I'm just highlighting that it's terrible advice because it's not meeting you where you're at with your current fears, your current desires, and helping you to find a different approach with food that actually works for you and you feel good about and you feel confident and you feel well and you feel healthy at the same time. The next reason why that advice of why don't you just eat less and move more is terrible advice, in my opinion, is sometimes the most helpful thing that someone can do is start to eat more, which can seem like an absolutely ludicrous or terrifying idea if you're struggling with binge eating or feeling out of control with food, because there can be this very real narrative of I'm a binge eater no matter what. I can't be trusted with food no matter what. I like food too much no matter what. And so when I'm not binge eating, I better make sure that I'm trying to eat as little as possible to offset that. If I started eating more during those periods, then I'm just going to be eating more and then I'm going to be binge eating on top of it. But please bear in mind that it certainly is quite common that when we struggle with binge eating and yo-yo dieting and we start eating more to adequately fuel ourselves and feel satiated and honor our hunger and release the reins a little bit, that's when appetite can start to rebalance and the intense urges to binge can start to come down. It's more complex than this, okay? I want to make this huge caveat. I'm not suggesting that the only way to move past the urge to binge is to go onto the all-in diet and that's the right course of action for everybody. Absolutely not. But is it true that it's common that when people who are yo-yo dieting start to honor their hunger and actually intentionally eat more, that their appetite starts to rebalance? Absolutely. There's lots more that I could say on this topic, like then having to use willpower to eat less or turning it into another rule, which fuels more disordered eating. But I've already gone through those in the video I just made in this series. Why eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full is terrible advice. And if you haven't seen that video, then I definitely recommend that you check that out after this one. And you have this sense that more tips and tricks on how to eat less or more rules or more diet plans, more weight loss strategies isn't actually going to help. If you have that sense that no matter where you turn when you try to control your eating, you keep arriving back at the same point, then consider that what you might be looking for is a normal and healthy relationship with food. One where you can eat freely without over or under eating, one where you trust yourself around food, one where you feel in healthy control with food, one where you can hear your appetite cues and respond to hunger and satiety without having to use any willpower. You might have thought, oh, that's just not me. Other people, I've seen that, other people have that, and that is absolutely not me. That wasn't the cards that I was dealt. And if you're thinking that, I'd like for you to consider for just a moment that it is possible for you to change your relationship with food, but it won't come from more dieting or trying to use more willpower to eat less and move more. If you want to learn more about what a healthy relationship with food is, what it looks like, start to try on if that's possible for you, if that feels right, I will leave links to other videos that I've made on that topic down below. And I'll also put videos down there that touch on how people develop a healthy relationship with food, even when they've been struggling with disordered eating and binge eating for sometimes 50 plus years. I'm going to leave this video here for now, but I will see you in one of those other videos where we'll dive even deeper into this topic for you. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.